Hi, Lavie. If you would like to introduce yourself with a few sentences, or you would like to say something to your Bulgarian fans, you can do it now.
Hi, thanks for having me. I was actually last in Bulgaria, I think in 1990. No, I was there a couple of years ago, but I was first in Bulgaria in 1994. So that was a very memorable summer for me. So it's lovely to see you.
Okay. Hello. Thank you. Той казва, че бил през 1994 в България и е прекарал едно приятно лято и поздравява всички. Okay. We have prepared a few questions here, and I'm going to start reading them, and I will read them in Bulgarian first, and then I will tell them in English. Okay? Значи, първият въпрос е относно научната фантастика в Израел. С какво се различава в израелската научна фантастика с тази от останалата част от света? Да, и публикациите също какви са там. Okay, Lavie, what is the science fiction of Israel, and is there anything specific that sets it apart from a part of the world, the rest of the world?
Well, there's the story that I think I mentioned in my Border Seth anthology as well. When I was growing up, we had American translated science fiction books, you know, all the classic American science fiction books, and that's what I grew up on.
Okay. Той казва, че общо взето преводите са били от американски преводачи и малко или много има влияние на американската култура, в американския начин на превод в Израел. Okay?
And so when I think I was 17 and I wanted to write my high school paper on Israeli science fiction. And I wrote to the person who was the main editor and translator of science fiction in Israel. And I said, I'd like to write about Israeli science fiction.
Okay. Значи той, когато е бил на 17 години, е искал да напише научна фантастика, но по неговия начин, по начина, по който той ги вижда нещата. И не по начин, по който му е бил показан до сега. Okay?
And he phoned me, and he said, the first thing he said to me was, you'll have to change the subject of your paper because there is no Israeli science fiction.
И неговия учител тогава е казал, че трябва да промениш предмета на неговата научна фантастика, защото няма израелски модел, така да се каже. Той трябва да постави началото.
Okay? So I thought, you know, at that point, I thought maybe I should write some.
Okay, затова той може би трябва да напише нещо. Okay?
So yeah, I think, you know, there's always been fantastical fiction. Israel tends to and I think it's in a lot of other countries as well, it tends to the realist fiction. It kind of looked down, the establishment always looked down on the fantastical.
Той казва, че винаги е имало нещо свързано с фантастичното в света. Дали ще бъде някоя приказка или просто като история, винаги имало нещо фантастично. Okay?
So the fantastical fiction, the science fictions, the fantasy that were published, and which I did research, were published either for children or they were published as cheap publications. It's the sort of thing you would buy in a kiosk, not in a bookshop.
Повечето фантастика, която се прави в Израел, е по-скоро за деца и която по-скоро би се продала като в нашите будки за вестници. Такъв мисъл, но не и в книжарници. Okay?
And I think what happened was once the internet started coming and in the late 90s and into the 2000s, people started getting together, you know, fans started getting together, they started having conventions, they started to publish magazines and original short fiction.
Okay. И в края на 90-те години тогава всичките фенове на научната фантастика и фантастиката като цяло са започнали да се събират и да образуват различни конференции, различни събирания, като нашето днес, за да могат да намерят нещо сходно. Okay?
So I think especially in the 2000s, you know, that was a real flourishing. So big conventions, there was something like 3 magazines being published. There was a new award that was set up to celebrate Hebrew science fiction and fantasy.
И от 2010 година това е бил бумът на израелската научна фантастика, когато са започнали да се принтират много различни изписания на тази тематика. Okay?
And I think now what we're seeing is, I think that, which again you see it in English as well, is you see more writers who come from the literary side writing novels that incorporate fantastical elements.
А сега има много повече хора, които включват фантастични елементи в техните произведения, дори да не са част от научната фантастика. Okay?
But it's still, you know, it is a small country. There's not that many people writing, really. And even, you know, for me, the difference was that because I lived abroad for a long time, I made the decision to write in English eventually instead of Hebrew.
Okay. Тъй като Израел е все още малка държава, с малко население, няма чак толкова много писатели на тази тематика. И въпреки това той е решил да пише на английски неговите произведения, защото все пак е живял и доста дълго време в чужбина, не в Израел. Okay?
So, you know, so that opens up the whole world in a way. And what I tried to do eventually was write science fiction that was set in Israel, that had an Israeli flavor to it, but I was writing it in English. And that paradoxically allowed it to then be published all over the world and in Bulgaria with Central Station.
Yes. Той каза, че е парадокс, че в него се зародило фантастичното от израелската култура, така да се каже, но въпреки това той пише на английски и след това се превежда на иврит и съответно на български с централна станция. Okay?
But if I'm honest, I'm not sure that I'm considered an Israeli writer by Israeli people. So they tend to consider me, I guess, as an English language writer now.
Okay. Той не е сигурен, ако е честен, не знае дали е считан за израелски писател, тъй като пише основно на английски. All right?
And I'm not actually very popular in Israel. It's very hard to get my books actually published in Israel. Whereas, say, I have more books published in Poland or Japan than in Israel.
Той казва, че не е много известен в собствената си държава, тъй като там не се публикуват много от неговите произведения, почти никакви, и е много по-популярен в Полша и в Япония, отколкото в Израел. Okay. Thank you for this long answer, and now let's go with the next question. What is the science fiction publishing in Israel like? Are there any specialized publishers and magazines? Do you know some of them by any chance?
So when I was growing up, that's when science fiction really, I would say the 1980s, science fiction really started as a genre, in that there were dedicated imprints for, you know, for translated science fiction. For American science fiction, a little bit of Lem, a little bit of the Strugatsky brothers maybe, but mostly American science fiction, and they came out in paperback. And it was all the classic science fiction novels.
Yeah. Следващия въпрос е относно какво е публикуването в Израел на тази тематика и има ли някакви специализирани издания, има и изписания на тази тематика. И той каза, че в края на 80-те години са били основно американски и няма кой знае колко специализирани издания в Израел на тази тематика.
Yeah, I think now it's harder. I think when stuff gets translated, it's a lot of it is the epic fantasy and young adult fiction that is more popular.
Той казва, че повече се превежда за младежи произведения, отколкото нали, на тази тематика.
But science fiction always has the people who really like science fiction. So there are always small publishers as well who come in. But my experience with all the small publishers, they're always fighting each other and they're suing each other. So that's been a big part of what's been happening.
Каза, че повечето неща, за които той пише, че са между хора, които се бият.
So I think at the moment there's a few online magazines. There's one print anthology that the Israeli Science Fiction Society puts out once a year, but it's not in the heyday of, say, 10-15 years ago.
Той спомена едно издание, не можах да го разбера много добре, което започна да се издава преди около 10 на години. Could you repeat this name of the publisher?
Oh no, there's been a few small publishers. I think there's one imprint called, I can't remember what it's called now. There was one publisher who did a lot of science fiction books. He did Central Station in Israel, and then he disappeared.
Okay.
They always disappear.
All right. Значи има няколко малки, но особено този издател, който е публикувал неговата книга "Централна станция" в Израел, скоро след издаването на книгата, тя е просто изчезнала, да, нали, това издание. Моля? Да. Do you know by any chance any Israeli scientific writers that you can recommend us?
Well, my favorite, the one I think was really brilliant, absolutely brilliant writer, is a good friend of mine. He's a guy called Shimon Adaf.
Окей. Въпросът беше дали той познава и знае някои писатели на тази тематика в Израел. И той каза за неговия приятел Шимон Адав, който може да го препоръча. Okay?
He's a very literary author, but he's a big science fiction fan, and all his books combine elements of science fiction, elements of detective fiction, and his first 3 books that have just been translated into English. So I'm really excited that he's going to maybe get seen by more readers now.
Okay. Той по принцип е литературен писател и е фен на научната фантастика, но в същото време има няколко книги издадени на научна тематика, на научната фантастика, и започва да добива все повече почитатели.
And obviously one of the most successful writers internationally from Israel is Edgar Keret, who I love. I love the work he does. It's very short stories that mix fantasy and science fiction and have a real emotional resonance.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Edgar Keret, who is probably the most famous of the last generation of Israeli writers in the world.
Okay. Yeah. Той каза, че един от най-известните писатели в последната генерация на писателите в Израел.
But you know, interestingly, I believe that the majority of, or a large number of, Russian science fiction actually comes from Israel now.
Той мисли, че голяма част от израелската фантастика е повлияна от руската фантастика. Okay.
So many of the Russian science fiction and fantasy writers moved to Israel in the 90s. And I understand that then they still publish in Russian, and you know, I don't know as much as I would like about that particular field, but I do believe that that might be a more significant scene in Israel than the Hebrew science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah, which movie? Could you repeat that?
I'm saying I think a lot of the Russian science fiction writers moved to Israel in the 1990s.
Yeah.
And they continue to publish in Russian. And it could be that the Russian science fiction in Israel is more important than the Hebrew science fiction in Israel.
Окей. Той казва, че по-скоро руската фантастика е по-известна и по-приета в Израел, отколкото самите израелци.
But there is not much connection between the Hebrew writers and the Russian writers, as far as I know.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Next question is that it's related to one of your books. Should we expect from you a novel where the main character has initials V and V? And let's say it's a very successful, maybe a horror writer.
Which novel? Sorry, man.
This refers to the novels A Man Lies Dreaming and Osama. In the first one, we talk about Hitler, and the other one is about Osama bin Laden, which is real character as well.
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yes, should we expect the character that it's called with initials V and V?
V and V.
And he's a very successful, maybe foreigner.
Who does that stand for? I'm sorry.
Well, okay, we move to the next question. I don't understand this one. About central station. Is central station an utopia or dystopia? Utopia or dystopia? Central station.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the
Yes, the question is Central Station an utopia or dystopia? At first glance, it has all the signatures of a cyberpunk, but which took place in overpopulated city. The artificial intelligence is reality, gene modification is widespread, you know. However, this novel stands out among the gloomy landscape of near future speculative fiction, because it describes a rather peaceful society in the Middle East, which has always been a hot war spot. In the novel, the traditionally warring fractions manage to build a community. Is this how you would like to see the Middle East one day?
Well, it was more, you know, I wanted to write science fiction because I love old science fiction. I love golden age science fiction, you know, and I wanted to play with a world that had all the toys from the golden age. I wanted to have spaceships and robots and all the cool stuff.
Той винаги е искал да пише относно научната фантастика, да си фантазира какво би се случило някъде за тези космически кораби и галактики и така нататък. Okay?
And so, you know, you can't really write a dystopia.
Можеш наистина да напишеш дистопия.
So I didn't set out to write a utopia or anything like that. I wanted to play with all these toys.
Той основно искал да си играе с тези играчки, с тези всички фантастични представи, които има в съзнанието си. И за това не е целял да бъде утопия или дистопия. Okay?
And then when the book was published, it was called an optimistic science fiction book.
Когато е била публикувана книгата, била считана за оптимистична научна фантастика.
Which I thought was interesting. It wasn't my intention necessarily to write an optimistic book, but I think we got so used to doom and gloom and books that tell us everything is going to be terrible. And in a way, as writers, it's important to give hope.
Неговата цел не е била да напише нещо оптимистично. Идеята му е просто да ги свърже всички тези неща и след когато е била публикувана книгата, реакцията просто на публиката е била такава, че в крайна сметка имала нужда от нещо позитивно, а да не се мисли винаги за нещо отрицателно, негативно и всичките тези космически войни, така да се каже. Okay?
So, I mean, it is a science fiction book. I don't have political power to say we can fix this bit or we can fix that bit. Obviously, the world right now is very similar to the world as it's been for the past thousands of years in terms of wars and conflict and strife. But if the book serves to give someone down the road, you know, the hope that things can be better, I think that's a wonderful thing.
Той няма тази сила, където може да каже, тук ще спрем войната, там ще спрем другата война и така нататък. Но се радва, че неговата книга дава надежда на хората, че някой ден и това може да се постигне. Okay?
And also, you know, my serious books, as you said about Adolf Hitler, they can be pretty depressing. And I like that when I write science fiction, I can be a more optimistic, I can have more fun, basically, and offer something different to my other stuff.
Той се радва, че може да предостави нещо различно на читателите си, да не е строго определено с научната фантастика, да се разграничи малко от нея също. Okay?
But you know, what it comes down to is I do love science fiction, and I love writing science fiction. And I think that's a big part of it. So I always have the most fun, I think, when I'm writing about robots and spaceships and, you know, everything else.
Той винаги се забавлява, когато пише за роботи, за космически кораби и винаги има удоволствие, когато пише на тази тематика. Okay.
But I mean, with Central Station, the other thing I tried to do with our book was I wanted to write a book that was the opposite of American science fiction.
That it was?
The opposite of American science fiction.
Okay, all right. Значи, целта на неговата книга Централна станция била да бъде нещо противоположно на американската научна фантастика.
So I wanted to write a book that didn't have conflict. It didn't have anyone trying to save the world. There was no lone cowboy hero, you know, riding the galaxy.
Неговата идея била да не пише за винаги да има война, винаги тази война да бъде спечелена от по-добрия, да няма каубойски истории, нали, американско влияние. Това е била неговата цел.
And I wanted to write about a big extended family.
Той е искал да напише за едно голямо сплотено семейство. Семейство не от 3-4 човека, но като цяла рода, един вид.
And I just wanted to write about little people and ordinary lives set against the background of the big science fictional universe.
Той искал да напише за малкото семейство, което би се до някъде противопоставил на голямата научна фантастика, на идеята за научната фантастика.
I just honestly didn't think anyone would actually publish it.
Честно казано, той не е смятал, че някой ще бъде публикувана тази книга.
So I'm still very surprised and pleased that it resonated.
Той все още е изненадан и доволен, че така откликнала на публиката. Yeah?
No, I'm saying what I have found is a lot of people read the book and then they complain that there's no plot to the book.
Много хора, срещу доста хора, които са чели книгата и много така са откликвали, че няма, нали, сюжет, да, нещо да се случи крайно. Okay?
And I think what they mean obviously is that it doesn't have the action adventure plot of an American science fiction book.
It was?
It doesn't have the action adventure plot of an American science fiction book.
Няма тази нотка на американската научна фантастика, която сме свикнали да четем. Okay?
But that was kind of my point in writing it in the first place.
Но това е била неговата цел, в крайна сметка. Искала да се разграничи от... да. Okay? All right, thank you. Let's stay a little bit more on the Central Station book and the writing method. Let me just quickly read what they meant by this. This seems to be a fix-up novel built from separate stories set in the same reality, much like the Noon 22nd century novel by Strugatsky brothers. The person who wrote these questions like these kind of novels because it offers more variety and more different settings and points of view. As far as this person know, you haven't used this form again. Did you grow out of it, or there were other reasons for abandoning it? Let me just quickly translate the question. Въпросът е относно начинът на писане на Централна станция. Изглежда, че сякаш е сглобил различни истории в една и съща реалност. Както при Стругацки, да. Както да. Да, и въпросът към него е относно дали той е израснал от този начин или той го е изоставил. Има някакви други причини да изостави начина на писане. Did you understand the question?
Yeah, actually, you know, I only read Noon 22nd century after writing Central Station, but I absolutely love that book.
Той казва, че е прочел тази книга на братята Стругацки, след като е написал неговата книга Централна станция.
And it really resonates with me, and I think it's partly because I also grew up in socialism.
Тази книга откликва на него и could you repeat the last part?
I'm saying it resonated with me. I really connected with it because I also grew up under socialism.
Yeah. Защото той също е израснал в социализма. Okay.
And I thought it was brilliant what they did, which was charting this future history, but from a communist perspective instead of a capitalist perspective.
Той казва, че по-скоро са братята Стругацки са написали тази книга от комунистическа гледна точка, отколкото от капиталистическа. Okay.
But to answer the question, so I set out from the start to write the book in this particular way, and it was partly because I didn't think anyone would publish the book.
Той е написал книгата така, както е чувствал, и е написал така, изобщо, пишейки я, той не е смятал, че някога ще бъде публикувана.
So I wanted to make each section of the book stand on its own so I could sell it to a magazine, and at least I can publish the book.
Okay, yeah. Той за това така е изработил книгата. Отделните разкази, ако не се включат в една книга, да бъдат продадени на отделни изписания като отделни разкази. Okay.
And the other thing was it allowed me to write the book over a longer period of time.
Другото нещо, което ме помогнало, е било, че доста дълго време е писал Централна станция. Okay.
So I could write other novels, and every now and then I will write the next section of Central Station.
Той може да пише други романи и от време на време да се връща обратно към Централна станция.
So I think it actually took about 6 years to get from the first one to the last one.
Той смята, че около 6 години му отнело изписването на първия разказ до последния.
Now, what I discovered is that I'm not really a novelist.
Това, което той е открил, е, че той не е толкова писател на романи.
I'm more of a short story writer. But what I discovered after Central Station is that I can write very long books if they're made up of a lot of smaller parts.
Това, което той е открил за себе си, че може да пише такива дълги романи, след като напише отделни разказчета и впоследствие да ги свърже.
So actually, if you look at all my recent novels, they are a lot more similar to Central Station.
Напоследък мисля, че неговите романи са като Централна станция, че си приличат по начина на писане.
At least in the structure that they use. I would love to write more books in that, you know, more science fiction books in that style, but I do find it quite hard, to be honest.
Той би искал да пише повече книги, не отделни разкази, които впоследствие да свързва, но му трябва повече време и повече мотивация. Иска да използвам българското му. Okay?
And you know, I do have another science fiction novel coming out in November.
Той казва, че има нова книга, която ще се издаде през ноември месец.
And it's called Neom, and it's set in the same universe as Central Station.
Казва се Неон и се разказва пак в същата тематика като Централна станция, същата реалност.
So I'm trying.
Но в крайна сметка той се опитва, нали, да направи книга отделна, не отделни разкази, а цяла книга. Okay?
And I hope that people who like Central Station will like this.
И той се надява, че хората ще харесат и тази негова книга като Централна станция. All right. The next question is, let's touch upon another side of your work as a community builder in real life, not in fiction. How did you come up with the idea for the world science fiction blog and anthology series?
Well, do you need to?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it started from a very selfish desire that I was a writer, I was a non-Anglophone writer, wanting, you know, wishing that editors would, you know, look at my work.
Yeah. Въпросът беше за неговия блог, който е създал. И каква е била идеята, нали? Какво е искал да постигне с този блог. Той каза, one moment please, and той е искал да предостави възможност на редакторите да четат различни произведения. Okay?
And, you know, I found that there was a real resistance in American science fiction publishing to really consider writers from outside. You know, it was a very closed, insular world of science fiction at the time.
Той каза, че американските издатели са били наистина затворени, така да се каже, не са приемали чуждестранни издатели и писатели на научната фантастика.
And like I said, I started traveling in 1994, I think, and I spent the summer in Bulgaria, and then I went to Romania, and I went to Hungary, and everywhere I went, I tried to pick up local science fiction.
През 95-та, когато той е посетил България, Румъния и Унгария, той винаги се е опитвал да си вземе по нещо от научната фантастика в тези държави.
And then in, I think, 2000, I went to Russia and to China.
И известната година е отишъл в Русия и в Китай.
And in China, in particular, I managed, you know, there was very early internet, very early. And I managed to connect with the local Chinese science fiction writers.
И тогава той, въпреки недостатъка на интернет, нали, ограничения достъп на интернет тогава, въпреки това той е успял да се свърже с издатели на научна фантастика в Китай.
And they really welcomed me in. And actually, I always say this, one of the people I briefly met when I was there was a very young writer called Lu Xixin, who I never expected would then become, you know, obviously a huge global star 20 years later.
Един от авторите, които е срещнал той там е Люси... Люцасин. Да, който, нали, става много известен и не е очаквал, нали, че ще се запознае с този автор.
So when I left China, I thought, I was so warmly welcomed, and I thought, I wish I could do something to give back in a way.
След като е напуснал Китай, той е искал да отдаде същото, да бъде така добре посрещнат. Затова е мислил как да отвърне на доброто, което е видял там.
And then about 2008, I was living in Laos, in Southeast Asia.
2008 година той е живял в Лаос.
And I thought maybe now I'm in I started publishing. I had a couple of small books out at the time. And I thought maybe now is the time to try and make this a reality.
Тогава, по това време, той е имал само няколко малки книги, които е издал, и тогава е решил, че е правилното време да създаде тази реалност, нали, този блог.
I worked with this very small publisher in America called Apex, and I knew the editor, and I said to him, I think we should do an anthology of international science fiction stories.
Тогава той работи с изключително малък издател в Америка, и тогава те са решили, нали, че трябва да направят нещо по въпроса. Това нещо.
And I said to him, you're not going to make any money doing this.
И той е казал, че няма да изкара кой знае какви пари от този блог.
But I just thought it was a good thing to do, and he agreed with me. And so for the first volume, I collected. So I had 2 stories from China that that were rough translations that I then edited as much as I could. I had stories from writers who started the same time as me, like Aliette Bogdad, I think. And I literally used that collection of books that I picked over the years to try and find stories from them.
Той в началото написал 2 истории, които е превел от Китай, където е взел тези 2 истории и ги е публикувал. Отделно имал също някакви идеи, които да се включат в неговия блог, от книжки, които събирал. Моля? Да, които се... Нали, говорим и за блога му. И казва, че тези различни истории са му помогнали да даде началото на тази дейност. Yeah?
So the blog was meant purely as a way of promoting the anthology.
Блогът е бил с цел да се създаде реклама за антологията.
But it ended up creating its own sort of community.
Could you repeat?
It ended up creating a community around it.
В крайна сметка, този блог е създал една общност.
Yeah. One of the interesting things is to show you how slowly publishing changes. A lot of the people that I published in
your voice is lost. Sorry. we couldn't hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now yes.
Okay. I'm saying if you look at the people that we published in the World SF anthologies or in the World SF blog, they were people who couldn't get, American publishers would not publish them, you know, to a large extent. But if you look at where they are now, you know, that list includes Tade Thompson, it includes Nadia Corafor, it includes Aliette de Bodard, it includes Silvia Moreno Garcia. It's all writers who became huge and maybe could have been, you know, if they had the support of the publishing industry earlier, they could have been published earlier.
Това разбрахте ли го? И аз почти не слушах, защото ми се говори от тук. Could you say with two sentences what you said just now, because there was some sounds around?
I'm saying we published a lot of writers who went on to become very, very successful 10 years later.
Yeah.
And I think the publishing industry ignored those voices for a very long time. Okay. And it was very easy to see because good writing is good writing.
All right. Той каза, че са публикували произведения, които 10 години по-късно са станали много известни, и много от издателите са игнорирали тези писатели дълго време, но в последствие виждат, нали, че има хляба в тяхното производство. Okay. All right. Now, this was the last question that we prepared for you. Now we will give the chance to the audience to ask a few questions to you, if you don't mind.
Oh, brilliant. Please do.
Okay. Това беше последният въпрос, който беше подготвен за Лави Тидхар. Така че всеки от вас, който има желание да го попита нещо, нека да зададе своя въпрос. Да, кажете.
Помните един млад еврей с наклонности към фантастиката по отношение на някои сюжети, които са описани в Тората, в Стария Завет?
Okay, така. So the question is, what does a young Jew think about the fiction which is related with the Torah?
Well, firstly, thank you for saying young.
Just, това първи въпрос ли? Just one second, there's addition.
Например, истории, свързани с Моисей,
stories related with Moses, with Ezekiel, Elijah, Enoch, and so on.
Възможно ли е тези истории, които са описани в Библията, според него, да имат някаква връзка с извънземни същества?
Is it possible all these stories written in the Torah and the Bible, is there any relation with any aliens, extraterrestrial life, and so on?
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of Erich von Däniken myself.
Which fan of?
Von Däniken.
And
he wrote about ancient aliens.
Така, той фен на този автор. Така, okay.
I have to admit, I have a dream of trying to one day write an epic science fiction novel that retells the Bible stories as science fiction.
Той има мечта за някой ден да напише някаква епична история, толкова епична като в Библията.
But yeah, I don't think we see too much science fiction or fantasy that is based on Jewish or biblical material.
Той мисля, че в научната фантастика няма толкова връзка с тези две книги.
I think it will be interesting to see if people make use of it. I know there was a discussion recently about what Jewish horror fiction might look like.
Той мисля, че някой път може да изглежда така някой филм на ужасите с тази тематика, свързана с историте. Да, да, окей. Okay. All right, Lavie, thank you for your time. Thank you for your time and your patience.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
One last question. You can say, може да кажеш въпроса. One last question, sir.
Алтернативна история, интересува ли се конкретната алтернативна история или просто случайно?
Are you interested in the alternative history, or it's just coincidence that you've written in this?
I'm not a huge fan of alternative history.
Той не е голям фен на тази история. Okay.
No, I think it can be just kind of an empty exercise a lot of the time.
Може да бъде като едно упражнение просто от време на време.
I'm more interested in what it can tell us about, our present, our real history.
Той иска да изучи какво би казало нашето настояще вместо да. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Lavie, and wish you good luck with your future plans, and maybe your dream come true.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope I get to visit in person soon instead of on a computer screen.
We hope the same. Thank you very much. Той също благодари за времето, което сме отделили за него, и някой ден се надява да се видим на живо. We also hope about that. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.